The Bitcoin Group, the American original. For over the last 10 years, the sharpest Satoshis, the best Bitcoins, the hardest cryptocurrency talk. We'd like to welcome our panelists. Thomas Hunt from the World Crypto Network. Hey, that's me. I'm doing the show by myself this week. We had a lot of cancellations. We tried to get a lot of guests for you. Didn't work out. But we're still working on it, and maybe they'll be here next week. And now, without any further ado, Hunt begins the show with the Bitcoin price chart. The price of Bitcoin seems to be completely sideways, up 0.35% in the last 24 hours, with a last of 70,231, a high of 71,379, and a low of 69,402. That's 1,378 Bitcoins changing hands. And $1 for 1,424 Satoshis, just on the wrong side of the 1,000 Satoshi barrier. Our top story today, a major article in Vanity Fair magazine. Crypto's true believers demand to be taken seriously. Shout out to Clara Malotte and photographer Jeremy Lieberman, who wrote this article and photographed it on March 17th, 2026. As it says here in the subline, they partied like rock stars, searched for aliens, practiced survivalism, and sometimes showed up without shoes. Then crypto winter came, and they lost billions. Clara Malotte talks to the zealots who are holding the line. And now the image from the article and the article itself. I don't think I can do this anymore, read one of the dozens of signal messages that a major crypto market maker who asked to go simply by Bison received in the first few days of February. The crypto market had just shed another 15%, some $400 billion gone in a matter of days. In the previous 4 months, the total value of cryptocurrencies had plunged nearly 50%, dragged down by Bitcoin, with both Ethereum and Solana dropping nearly 60%. The crash erased roughly $2 trillion in value and tipped the industry into a bear market known in crypto slang as a winter. A nerdy subterranean nod to the Game of Thrones foreboding refrain, winter is coming. Bison recounts stories of top founders scrambling to take companies private, close emergency equity rounds, or abandon ship altogether. Veterans of the space have endured worse, with the market dropping 80 or even 90%. But this season felt different. Not to make it about me, but the timing from my perspective was comically bad. In October, as euphoria under a deregulated crypto-friendly Trump administration pushed the market towards its peak, I had begun working on a feature about the faces behind an often faceless industry. As the market stalled, so did several of my conversations with prospective participants, some who had viewed this kind of press as a victory lap. Executives at Coinbase fell conspicuously silent as its CEO, Brian Armstrong, watched an estimated $10 billion evaporate from his net worth while battling regulators in Washington. Tensions simmered within Ethereum's ranks, where its quasi-mythic co-founder, Vitalik Buterin, fired off tweets about his concerns for the way his platform is scaling, and, as an early polymarket backer, his distaste for the ultra-addictive direction of blockchain-based prediction markets. Rank-and-file traders, dismissed by OGs as tourists, either panic-sold, drifted toward shinier obsessions like AI and prediction markets, or quietly shed the identity of crypto bro altogether. They're all pussies, says Meltem Demore, an early crypto investor who now runs her own firm, Crucible Capital, of her panicked peers. She is layered in diamond crosses and wearing a black sweatsuit with her firm's slogan, "Believe in something," bedazzled across the ass. For the first time in years, she is buying Bitcoin again. And so, on a biting February afternoon, as the market continues its slide, a small circle of crypto true believers gathered inside a Beau Arcs landmark on the Lower East Side, a former bank once nicknamed the Temple of Capitalism, now reborn as a $300 million later as the 9 Orchard Hotel. Michael Novogratz, CEO of Galaxy Digital, is its newly minted co-owner. Collectively, billions poorer on paper, Novogratz, Demore, and other crypto players Olaf Carlson Wee, Kathy Wood, and Danny Ryan compared notes, not about what they had sold, but about what they were buying. Wood, armed with realms of proprietary research, and Carlson Wee, who insists he never follows the news, are accumulating Bitcoin. Ryan shrugs off the daily noise altogether. "I'm a Luddite," he proclaims. "People will tell me when I need to know something." Technology without belief, Demore reiterates. Technology without spirituality is nothing. Unlike Jesus' followers who doubted his resurrection, crypto's true disciples aren't losing faith. Really, Demore says, what we are building was a religious movement. Asset classes, whether gold, commodity, real estate, bonds, or stocks, are all an answer to the same question. Where does value come from? They are social constructs that mean something because we collectively agree they do. Gold says, from nature and scarcity. Bonds say, from institutional trust. Real estate says, from place and permanence. Commodities say, from matter itself. Stocks say, from human ingenuity. Each one needs a creation myth, from scarcity to capitalism itself. But for those who believe crypto is the 6th asset class, it works precisely because they insist that its value is more than financial. I have been waiting for this since we closed the gold window in 1971. Wood, whose actively managed ETFs bet highly on disruptive technology, recalls being told by Arthur Laffer, the Reagan-era economics titan who helped develop the Laffer curve, how big could this idea be? Wood asked him. His answer revealed the fantasies of crypto's earliest adherents. Well, how big is the U.S. monetary base? On Halloween in 2008, just 6 weeks after Lehman Brothers, the 4th largest investment bank in the country, imploded, taking with it the myth of institutional security, a mysterious figure under the pseudonym Satoshi Nakamoto quietly emailed a short list of cryptographers a 9-page PDF titled Bitcoin, a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. Now simply known as the White Paper, Nakamoto outlined a novel financial system that completely bypassed central authorities like banks, government, the Federal Reserve, and as a result would insulate everyday people from inflation, seizure, and the caprices of monetary policy. Bitcoin secures itself through mining, specialized computers competing to solve cryptographic puzzles, and access depends upon the ability to memorize a specific series of words. Lose the phrase, and your funds are gone forever. Remember it, and you could reclaim your wealth from anywhere in the world without asking anyone's permission. By 2009, Nakamoto took Bitcoin from theory to reality, mining the Genesis block. And then once the rules were set, protections against counterfeits were secured, and Bitcoin began to circulate, still worth next to nothing. Nakamoto vanished. His disappearance not only deepened the myth, but granted Bitcoin true decentralization. No longer was there an omnipotent figure at the reins. Now the experiment belonged to everyone and no one. I fell in love with it, says Eric Voorhees, founder of Shapeshift Currency Exchange and Venice AI, who discovered Bitcoin in 2011 while working for the Libertarian Free State Project in New Hampshire. I thought Bitcoin might take over the world, he said, enamored that it couldn't be debased, that no singular person or company controlled it, and that nobody could stop it. The movement took hold in the fringes of society among a ragtag group of misfits, disillusioned with a post-recession world and in search of both social and political change. Its early believers were mostly young, mostly male, and hyper-online. They were cypherpunks on the message boards, creating their own echo chamber and convinced that cryptography could do what regulators never would: redistribute power. It was like the rebels in Star Wars, says Nofagratz, who was wearing his new red Valentino suit at the photo shoot and describing a movement that saw itself as small, scrappy, but morally certain. Once you really understand Bitcoin, says Carlson Wee, the founder and CEO of the crypto hedge fund Polychain Capital, you can't unsee it. He first encountered Bitcoin on an online forum during his senior year at Vassar College in 2011 and was quickly overtaken with the conviction that cryptocurrency was the future of global finance, even persuading his thesis advisors to let him write about it. After graduating, while working as a lumberjack in Washington, he cold emailed his resume and thesis to Coinbase, then a tiny startup operating out of a San Francisco apartment. He was hired within days as Coinbase's first employee. In those early days, it felt like everybody knew a secret the rest of the world didn't know about yet. By the time Occupy Wall Street began sounding the alarm bells about growing wealth inequality in the US, the crypto ideals of self-sovereignty and the global democratization of financial access also resonated with a generation that had watched trillions in household wealth evaporate while the government bailed out the banks. My first day on the trading floor was the day after Lehman Brothers went bankrupt, said Arthur Hayes, who is snowed in on a remote Japanese island, unshaven and clad in a red thermal t-shirt. An interesting way to start your financial services career. Hayes had aimed squarely at traditional finance, Wharton, Deutsche Bank, Citigroup. But watching colleagues get fired while markets collapsed pushed him towards assets he could control, first gold, and then, in 2013, Bitcoin. By 2014, between jobs and living on a friend's couch, the 28-year-old Hayes co-founded BitMEX, which brought Wall Street-grade leverage and derivatives to crypto traders and would eventually create the perpetual swap. Instead of buying Bitcoin and holding it, now traders could place leveraged bets of 10, 50, and even 100 times their initial stake on whether its value will rise or fall. Some died, some went bankrupt, some did really well. Hayes says flatly of the early converts whose fortunes were sometimes made or obliterated in a matter of minutes. The product exploded, generating trillions and minting a new class of crypto degenerates who were willing to take massive risks that occasionally resulted in millions. It turned crypto into a casino. When no one is in charge, who gets to decide the future? That was the point, and also the problem. Disagreements bubbled up about everything from ethical use cases to whether Bitcoin's ecosystem should expand to include new tokens. Still, it was this unruly coalition, libertarians, venture capitalists, builders, traders, scammers, that went on to push crypto into the mainstream. The same year that Hayes made Bitcoin feel closer to gambling than gold, Buterin, a spindly 20-year-old Theo fellow who looked like he should be walking a Dema-era Balenciaga show, blew the industry wide open. Novogratz recalled the afternoon in 2014 when his Princeton roommate Joseph Lubin brought him to Brooklyn to meet members of the Ethereum Foundation, who would launch their platform the following year. Through smart contracts, self-executing code living on the blockchain, Ethereum meant that developers could suddenly build entire financial universes, lending platforms, digital art markets, self-governing organizations, no banks, no corporate overlords, just code. Lubin had an almost religious conversion, says Novogratz, recalling being told Ethereum was going to change and save the world. Lubin had visions of entire economies migrating onto the chain, stablecoins supporting fragile third world currencies, open source finance replacing the opacity of legacy banking. I didn't need the world to be saved because I was already rich, says Novogratz. But I was like, this is kind of cool. I didn't have the aha moment with Bitcoin, says Etherealize co-founder and president Danny Ryan, his long hair braided, wearing a thin black t-shirt and jean jacket on a single-digit degree New York day, and a plastic yellow nose ring he claims helps him breathe. Instead, his revelation came in 2016 when he discovered Ethereum. By January 2017, his sole focus was making himself useful at Buterin's foundation, where he would soon be hired just as crypto burst into the mainstream. It was a fucking moment in time, says Demure, recalling the day she knew she'd made it. A conference that November where she watched Ethereum nerds clad in unicorn t-shirts and Hawaiian button-downs instruct the newly arrived Goldman and Andreessen Horowitz types on how to set up MetaMask wallets and participate in ICOs. Bitcoin had hit $10,000 and crypto's total market capitalization surged from 16 billion to a peak of 535 billion that year, an annual growth rate exceeding 3,200%. Demure said, I went on Net-a-Porter and bought myself a pair of red Giuseppe Zanotti heels and had them same day delivered to the conference. Ethereum meant there was no longer one coin, one origin myth, or one philosophy. Anyone could build anything. It shattered singularity, but it also fractured unity. The US government never quite knew what to do with an industry whose founding premise was to evade centralized authority. To regulators, crypto appeared as one impenetrable blur of internet scam. The market would spend the next decade swinging between euphoria and collapse, wiping out the life savings of many while producing generational wealth for the savvy few who correctly rode the wave. Yet, inside of crypto's ecosystem, the divisions appeared enormous. The old guard versus tourists, ideologue versus grifter, builder versus trader. There are two kinds of crypto bros, says Voorhees. The first is the legitimate crypto bro, someone philosophically aligned with Bitcoin's original ethos, who cares about decentralization, privacy, and individual sovereignty, he says. They are vilified because they stand on principle that many modern institutions, specifically the government and its bedfellow fiat banks, abhor. Then there are the tourists and the scammers. These are the guys driving around in Lambos, slinging meme coins, he says. They have no principle. They generally showed up after 2017. They range from outright scammers to the slightly grifty, to honest folks who just don't know any better. They're rightly vilified because they suck. Meanwhile, one crypto holder, let's call him Moose, pulls out an ID card from Palau, a sovereign island off the coast of Micronesia, that he's ordered online for $200 and shows it to me like it's a joke, which it partly is, except it's to show how he accesses offshore derivatives platforms unavailable to Americans. Everyone does this, he says. He's 27, and like many men his age, he first encountered crypto while trying to buy drugs and fake IDs on the Silk Road in the mid-2010s. His heroes aren't athletes or movie stars, but anonymous Twitter accounts, anime avatars, and pseudonyms with cryptic bios, whose followers track their trades with devotional intensity. Jordan Fish occupies a different register of the same world. Known online as Kobe, his Telegram profile is a fluffy white puppy mid-jump. He made early money in Lido, the staking protocol that democratized Ethereum validation, and later founded Echo, a members-only crypto investment platform worth north of $300 million. Being a crypto bro was almost cool in 2019, he tells me over encrypted chat. Now it's very much not cool. As crypto moved from fringe to mainstream cultural punchline, its promise of a revolution faded. The men who once styled themselves renegades increasingly resembled every other hyper-online young guy. Gaming, memeing, trading. The aesthetic didn't help. There was the infamous conference after parties, Hayes 2023 rave in Singapore during Token 2049 that drew thousands and ran out of alcohol after only an hour, ending in security fending off a mob of wasted and determined crypto bros who were all but scaling the walls to get in. At the same conference 2 years later in Dubai, Carlson Wee, who jets between California and the United Arab Emirates, where he's reported worked on projects with the government, partied on a Lotus mega yacht alongside Jordan Jefferson, CEO of Doge OS, reportedly sporting a t-shirt of what he calls Habibi Doge, a Shiba Inu in customary Emirati headdress called a kandura. A UAE-linked firm notably had purchased a $500 million stake in a Trump family crypto venture before his inauguration. There was even a party where Rick Ross had to fend off an army of crypto nerds who were trying to scale the stage. I went to La Garite for 3 days straight, says Demore of last year's Ethereum conference in Cannes. I was drunk and army crawling on the table, she adds. It will never be in June again. Ethereum people hate nice things and having fun. They want you to eat tofu and wear organic cotton only and suffer. Everyone assumes if you've made money in crypto, you're on a yacht in Miami with 100 prostitutes, says Demore, whose interests include alien and rocket research, collecting esoteric objects of divine provenance, and learning how to survive in a wide range of conditions with no equipment or tools. And then there are the whales, Bitcoin's own leviathans. In crypto slang, the term refers to individuals who have more than 1,000 Bitcoins, but they often possess up to $10 billion worth of digital assets, some large enough to move markets with a single transaction. The whales are completely anonymous. They don't attend conferences, host parties, or fire off controversial tweets, underscoring a point raised by almost everyone I spoke to for this story. The loudest voices in crypto are rarely the richest. Anonymity, once an ideological rejection of centralized power, is also practical. Visibility in crypto is a liability. The industry sees dozens of violent attacks per year, kidnappings, home invasions, armed robberies. Massive data leaks expose holdings, turning digital wealth into physical targets. Last year, a crypto holder in Nolita escaped his alleged attackers after what he says was 2 weeks of being tortured for his password. I stopped being a public figure, Fish says, because it's likely a personal risk. Devin Finzer and his wife, Yu Chi Lira Ko, meanwhile, travel with an enormous, looming man who looks more Viking than Secret Service. That's our bodyguard, Ku says casually. Demore has her own theory about longevity. There's a secret to lasting a really long time, she says. You never become the main character. I'm a side character. Everybody knows who I am, but nobody really knows why. On the morning of the photo shoot, Wood doesn't recognize Demure, who she hasn't seen in over a decade. You somehow look younger, Wood says, pulling her into a hug. It's because I'm rich now, Demure responds with a wink. Carlson Wee introduces himself to Wood with the sweet docility of a young boy meeting his hero. They immediately dive into conversation about the years when everyone thought they were crazy, affirming their shared conviction that when the market's down, you buy, lightly skirting the reality that crypto is down nearly 50% from 3 months ago. Novogratz swaggers in, wearing a full-length silver puffer jacket, greeting everyone warmly before announcing that he really wishes he wasn't on day 2 of a gnarly hangover. He then proceeds to describe a Saturday night that climaxed with a 4 a.m. trip to the Burning Man-inspired New York nightclub Gospel, which he hopes his 30-year-old daughter and her new husband, who live nearby, did not witness. Ryan keeps to the room's edges, watching with a mix of amusement and horror. Demore and her assistant flip through the options they've brought. Kate, Chappellarelli, Jill Sander. Novogratz deliberates between a bedazzled black suit and that Valentino. Ryan, meanwhile, has only brought 2 pairs of pants. His favorite has a hole in the crotch. He wears them anyway. I'm so hot, he complains, barefoot, as the hairstylist blow dries his thick locks. Where's Devin? Demure asked. Finzer and Co. are 4 floors above in their own private suite, with a team of assistants, security, celebrity hair and makeup artists, surrounded by racks of couture. I have Armani Privé flying in, Ku tells me, an elegant black jacket from Mr. Armani's last collection before he passed away. Then, to the fashion director, someone from Jean-Paul Gaultier haute couture flew in with options. In the end, after millions of dollars of couture have been considered, she chooses an Armani gown that isn't even couture and forgoes wearing her jar jewelry. You look like a fucking clown, Demore texts Ku when she learns the pair are upstairs with an entire team. Finzer co-founded the NFT marketplace OpenSea in 2017, which means that in the eyes of crypto's pioneers and even his wife, he missed the critical cutoff to be considered an OG. His origin story reads like a Silicon Valley mother's dream. He grew up outside San Francisco, went to Brown, majored in computer science and math, took a job as a software engineer at Pinterest, and then, as crypto exploded into the mainstream, he and a friend, Alex Alatella, decided to build essentially the eBay of digital assets. Inspired by the tokenization happening on Ethereum, and particularly the explosion of the digital cat trading platform CryptoKitties, they launched OpenSea. Shortly after COVID hit, bored at home, A generation of young men flooded into the online universe of crypto, and NFTs took off. By 2021, Beeple NFT artwork sold at Christie's for $69 million, and avatars like Bored Ape Yacht Club and CryptoPunks had become status symbols in the way a Rolex or a Porsche once was. Someone apparently even spent more than $1 million for clip art of a rock. By January 2022, OpenSea's valuation skyrocketed to more than $13 billion. That same year, as a young Finzer scrambled to keep pace with a rapidly growing company and found himself suddenly admitted to the top echelons of Silicon Valley society, he met Quo. She was like a Ferrari engine inside a hot girl, he says. He called me the day after the shoot to say he will only participate if Quo, who he describes as his co-founder of OpenSea 2.0, stands next to him in the photograph. The request triggers eye rolls from their fellow participants who laugh and chat between frames, barely acknowledging the couple. Moments Finzer and Quo used to instead get touch-ups from their own hair and makeup team. The tension is palatable. A few days later, back in their everyday athleisure, Quo and Finzer reflect on OpenSea's past. Quo tells me that she had expressed her doubts to Finzer about OpenSea even before the moment in 2022 when the crypto market crashed and the NFT bubble burst, but that it fell on deaf ears. OpenSea was too trendy, and Finzer too immature and short-sighted, she says, to pivot quickly enough towards something more enduring. My family measured things in generations, she tells me, but people in crypto measure things in years. Everybody was blowing smoke up his ass. Forbes, Devin's face, 29 years old, good looking. Everybody wants to fly him private to the Super Bowl, take him to every gala. She pauses. I'm not impressed by this stuff. It was just a humbling process, adds Finzer quietly. Even though all these people have gassed you up, you have so much to learn. The market had been building towards collapse for months. Bitcoin fell from its 2021 peak of 69,000 to 16,000, kicking off the worst winter the industry had ever seen. OpenSea's valuation tumbled about 90%. Terra Luna imploded in May 2022, erasing more than $40 billion from the Terra ecosystem in 72 hours, wiping out retail investors worldwide. Three Arrows Capital, one of crypto's largest hedge funds, collapsed shortly after. Then in November came the infamous fall of Sam Bankman-Fried's exchange FTX, the industry's golden child, undone in a week. He would ultimately be arrested and convicted of 7 counts of fraud and conspiracy, stealing as much as $10 billion from customers. Devin isn't my first time advising one of the Wonder Kids, says Quo, without elaborating. As the company cratered and the NFT bubble burst, Quo became what she calls Finzer's product mommy and considers Finzer her Build-A-Bear. Now they're relaunching OpenSea as something they claim is even more ambitious. We tell normal people it's an expansion, she says, but the world, explaining that the normies, those outside the crypto space, can't yet fathom what technology will do to their lives in the next 5 to 10 years. As the OGs are tired and quitting, she says, we feel more animated than ever. Not everyone shares the conviction. The more blockchain infrastructure matures, the harder it becomes to explain what OpenSea's platform offers that trading venues like Coinbase or Gemini don't. The projects that are succeeding have raised the bar. Hyperliquid and Uniswap, for example, now share revenue with token holders. Most tokens can't compete with that model. The majority are issued primarily for governance purposes, giving holders a vote on protocol decisions, but no direct stake in the company's economics. The demise of FTX not only sent the whole industry into a free fall, but ignited what the crypto world would come to call a witch hunt. A coordinated regulatory assault designed to strangle a technology its overseers didn't understand and couldn't control. Regulators saw it differently. The crypto world was the Wild West, and even if the rules weren't perfect, at least it was a good start to protect American investors. President Joe Biden had installed Gary Gensler, a former Goldman Sachs partner, MIT blockchain professor, and thus a man who understood crypto better than almost any other regulator, to chair the SEC with the ambition to bring the industry to heel. The central question was whether cryptocurrencies were securities or commodities. The answer determined everything. Securities fall under SEC jurisdiction, meaning exchanges and token holders would need to register, disclose, and comply with investor protection rules designed for stocks. Rules built for centralized institutions, not assets that could be sent and received anywhere on Earth without a bank, a broker, or a border. Applying traditional financial forms of regulation to a technology that at its core was about self-sovereignty, privacy, anonymity, and breaking down global barriers was destined to fail. Described in the crypto world as a regulation by enforcement, Gensler charged companies with violating security laws and enforced a regulatory crackdown that squeezed crypto-friendly banks out of the system. The SEC at the time was trying to sue crypto out of existence, says Ryan, who recalls getting served with papers on Easter Sunday 2024 while setting the table for dinner. I was the highest person at the Ethereum Foundation in the US, he says plainly, when I ask why he thought he was targeted. Hayes was sentenced to 6 months of home confinement in May 2022 after pleading guilty to willfully failing to implement anti-money laundering controls at BitMEX, specifically for allowing American customers to access the platform via VPNs while publicly claiming otherwise. He had, at a conference, bragged that it was cheaper to bribe Seychelles officials than to comply with U.S. regulations. Binance CEO Changpeng Zhao, commonly known as CZ, fared worse. In April 2024, he was sentenced to 4 months in federal prison for enabling money laundering. Binance paid $4.3 billion in fines, one of the largest corporate penalties in U.S. history. Then, Donald Trump had his second coming. Trump called Bitcoin a scam in 2021. 3 years later, he was keynoting the Bitcoin convention and promising to make America the crypto capital of the planet. Even though Trump embodied so many values that were antithetical to the globalist utopian vision of the crypto evangelists, his positive stance on the industry was enough to secure their votes. I don't think there's a political party in the United States that is inherently pro or anti-crypto, says Hayes. And if crypto investors act as single-issue voters, the question before politicians is really, do I want them or do I not want them? I think I'm the only person in crypto that didn't vote for Trump, says Novogratz, a major progressive donor who spent years unsuccessfully trying to get Elizabeth Warren to sit down with him about the industry. It's still a politically charged industry, and it shouldn't be. It should be bipartisan, he says. We need rules. One reason there's been no innovation is because there are no rules. Meanwhile, in the final months before Trump's re-election, Ryan got a letter. Case closed. His lawyers, former SEC attorneys, told him they had never seen the agency do this before. The best you can get is they just stop talking to you, he says. Instead, his charge of security fraud just evaporated. What happened? It was politics. Let Ryan tell it. The Biden administration realized their margins in the presidential race were too close for comfort, and they could no longer afford to alienate all of tech. The industry would ultimately pour $135 million into the 2024 election, with most reportedly going to Republican candidates, and win more than 90% of the races it backed. In 2025, Trump launched $Trump, his own meme coin, which shot to a market cap of around $10 billion before cratering some 80% within weeks. And once he was inaugurated, he issued federal pardons to Hayes and Yao. Bankman-Fried remains in prison. The supposed tourists followed swiftly with their own meme coins. Back at 9 Orchard, the photo shoot is underway, and almost everyone has descended downstairs. I try to get Carlson Wee to finally talk politics as he's puts the final touches on his outfit. He holds firm that he stays out of Washington. I say that growing up in D.C., I was raised with the belief that not following politics was immoral. It is, says Novogratz from the makeup chair across the room, not looking up. Carlson Wee drifts over to him. It was a striking posture for the first employee of Coinbase, even as his former boss Armstrong had just stalled the Digital Asset Market Clarity Act, the sweeping legislation the crypto industry had spent years and millions of dollars fighting for, and rumor has it, pulling his support on the eve of the Senate vote once the final draft threatened a revenue stream worth hundreds of millions of dollars annually. At Davos, J.P. Morgan's Jamie Dimon told Armstrong he was full of shit. Much of the crypto community agreed. Depending on one's vantage point, crypto's permeation of the establishment is either a betrayal of everything it was supposed to be, or proof that the experiment worked. Some of the most committed believers in decentralization are now in closed-door Oval Office meetings. Crypto is held not only by everyday people, but by sovereign wealth funds, family offices, and corporations with private wealth managers. The movement born to make Wall Street irrelevant has become one of the most powerful lobbying forces and its most reliable clients. We won, Moose had told me. But does winning just turn us into every other asset class? Is the industry becoming everything it hated? Or changing the world from the inside out? This was Crypto's True Believers Suddenly Demand to be Taken Seriously by Clara Malot, photographer Jeremy Liebman. In other news, Bitcoin educator Andreas Antonopoulos says he will stop producing live streams and new content due to health issues. Antonopoulos previously said that he'd been suffering from debilitating migraines and had tried nearly every treatment available, but nothing has successfully stopped them. Andreas Antonopoulos is a frequent guest on this show. He even appeared on an early Mad Bitcoin show that later became the Bitcoin Group. Let's look at a little bit of the Bitcoin Group from October 18th, 2013 with Andreas Antonopoulos.
Andreas.
Brief unwanted history lesson. In God We Trust was added in 1954 by an anti-communist crusader following the Joe McCarthyite witch hunts or commie hunts in Congress. Before that, the national motto was a pluribus unum, out of many comes one. In God We Trust was added 22 years after the decline of the gold standard, and we switched our trust from gold to God, dropping an L, and as a result, our currency has devalued accordingly. Backing currency by fictional beings doesn't really help. A pluribus unum is a much better slogan because out of many comes one is the Bitcoin ethos. Bitcoin has emergent value that comes out of the collaboration of thousands of nodes, each offering their computational capability. Bitcoin is backed by the computational capability of the internet, a very tangible silicon-based system that is very effective as a store of value. So I prefer a pluribus unum from In God We Trust.
It's just
Powerful words from Andreas Antonopoulos. Let's check in with it again, this time at the Mad Bitcoins Christmas special, December 23rd, 2023.
Technologies. Make your own altcoin at Alpha Lion Technologies.
Campaign.
Very different, and very different from the spirit in Las Vegas. So at the same time, it's been a crazy, crazy run-up because during this explosion in the price and media attention, I just got really, really busy really fast. I can tell you, went from doing maybe 1 or 2 media requests a month to 1 or 2 a week to now 1 or 2 a day. And it hasn't stopped. I mean, I'm here in Chicago on some business, and I've been doing an interview a day, pretty much, for Bitcoin. So it's just moving really fast.
Andreas would continue to move fast, representing Bitcoin all over, including on the Joe Rogan Show, and appearing on one of the first episodes of the World Crypto Network. Here you can see him with Chris Ellis, perhaps one of the roots of his famous facepalm Andreas pose. He obviously didn't know he was on camera here. Let's check in with February 2014, one of the first episodes of the World Crypto Network.
This is the 15-minute chart. Since we last reported to you about 8 hours ago, the price has seen a little bit of a rebound, although I would draw your attention to the pretty low volumes here. So I wouldn't read too much into that at the moment. This comes off the back of recent news of what has to be one of the best announcements Mt. Gox has ever made. It really does stand up there in a shining light, high up on the league table, in light of recent news reports and the potential repercussions on Mt. Gox's operations and the market. A decision was taken to close all transactions for the time being in order to protect the site and our users. We will be closely monitoring the situation and will react accordingly. Best regards, Mt. Gox team. And this comes about what must have been, Andreas, 18 to 20 hours after this leaked document emerged. What do you make of it?
I'm just, well, I'm feeling very mixed feelings right now. I'm very upset, and I'm hurt by the knowledge that it seems likely at this point that a lot of people have lost large amounts of money, and I'm angry at Karpeles and Gox for just being, at best, irresponsible on such a massive scale. I don't know what's going on any more than anybody else does. I've seen the leaked documents. I've seen the claims that all of the funds are gone. And I know that this is probably going to take weeks just to find out what exactly is going on, but certainly if this allegation or these claims were not true, I would have expected to see at the very least a statement from Gox saying we have the money, and the fact that they can't even make that statement is extremely worrying and leads me to believe that it seems they don't. And so, we can draw some conclusions. They had said in the past that they kept funds in cold storage. So either that cold storage wasn't actually cold, or something else is going on, something worse. And really speculating at this point without information is probably, is certainly irresponsible. So all we can do is go on what information is out there and the response we see from Gox. And unfortunately, what they're doing is they're creating more uncertainty by not providing clear information to the market. If the money's gone, Mark, just say, look, the money's gone, everyone, and let's move on from there and figure out how to unravel this mess. this is going to be a hard lesson for everyone in Bitcoin, but it's important to learn the right lesson. The right lesson is that the Bitcoin decentralized system depends on ownership and trusts being retained by the end users. If you have your keys and no one else has your keys, then your funds are as secure as your control and ownership of those keys. And this is a message that I've been delivering consistently for more than 2 years now, and for almost 2 years now. What Gox did is they demonstrated that if you take all of the funds off the blockchain, take control of all of the users' keys, then you have to trust in Gox and not the Bitcoin blockchain. And trust in institutions with centralized control over money is something we've seen in the past. And it's something that requires either heavy external auditing and regulation, or it leads to potentially catastrophic results. Now, the hard lesson to realize here is that in Bitcoin we can do better. We can do cryptographic proof of solvency of exchanges. We can verify their funds using the transparency features of the blockchain, and we can set up systems that keep the control of keys and the control of funds in the hands of the users. I work for Blockchain Info, and we have 1.2 million or more web wallets, and blockchain has no access to the funds in those wallets. Blockchain has no access to the keys that control the funds in those wallets. Everything that happens on that site happens in the user's browser, with the user's password, and with the user controlling the keys and creating transactions in their browser. We never touch the funds, we never touch the keys. Not only could we not be robbed of customer funds by an external force, blockchain couldn't steal the funds from the customers even if we wanted to, because we have no access to them. Only the customers have access to the keys.
Sadly, the industry did not listen to Andreas's words about keeping things decentralized and not trusting black boxes of trust. And now we just have more and fancier black boxes of trust. Andreas is a great commentator on Bitcoin, and it was an honor to have him on our shows. I wish he'd been able to be on more of our shows. Kind of got big there. But I respect the way he kept doing his Patreons. He kept answering people's questions. He kept educating the people. And even though he didn't take sides in the scaling war, and I thought he should have, he did later come out and take sides recently against Bitcoin knots and against the idea of censoring the Bitcoin transactions. I appreciated him for doing that. And he's just always been just a hero and a great a service and a pillar of this industry. So I think it's kind of fitting that we do him on that Andreas is retiring here on this day of the Vanity Fair article. I think you can draw your own contrasts between the different kind of people that are being celebrated versus the kind of people that are doing the work. And I think that Andreas was down here doing the work. As of course Yeats said, "Mere anarchy is loosed upon the world, the blood-dimmed tide is loosed, and everywhere the ceremony of innocence is drowned. The best lack all conviction, while the worst are full of a passionate intensity." But we're celebrating Andreas today, and we hope to celebrate him again in the coming weeks when we have the panelists are back, hopefully. No one was available today. But just what a great history. There's so many great episodes on the World Crypto Network and Mad Bitcoins, as well as on Andreas's channel and on his Patreon and his Twitter and so forth. So there's plenty of Andreas to go around. He definitely made his mark on this industry, and he will be missed. Issue 3. He spent $69 million on an NFT. 5 years later, he believes in digital art more than ever. I think one of the big things to understand about this guy is that we can't properly picture his wealth. For him to spend $69 million on that Beeple NFT, which is a really impressive NFT, it's hundreds, maybe thousands of days of Beeple's work. If you guys aren't familiar with Beeple, he does an artwork every day. And in the beginning, maybe they weren't so great, but his obsession, his hard work, he makes a new one every day, led to an incredible amount of artwork that became one large NFT that was later won by this gentleman. Justin Sun from Tron says that he tried to outbid him at 70 million, but the bid didn't go through. The CNN article interviews Vignesh Sundarasian, who bought one of the most expensive NFTs and expensive artworks in the history of the world. I think it's top 3 or top 4 pretty easily. Not a Van Gogh, not a Picasso, but 5,000 satirical, often dystopian drawings from Beeple. So it's interesting to see them go back to this. Obviously, they think that he's lost a lot of money, but he seems fine with it. He's got a special viewing room. He's looking for ways to maybe spread the work or allow people to view the work. But he's kind of accepted that it's become an albatross with the negativity of people not accepting the price that he paid. But it was a special time in NFTs. And we'll see, maybe it lasts. Maybe it becomes real art. But it's interesting to see as they keep doing these refresh pieces, what it will look like in 5 years or 10 years. Moving on to issue 4. The SEC approves Nasdaq's move to support tokenized securities trading. The SEC approval lets Nasdaq test the blockchain versions of stocks that trade and settle like traditional shares. This is something we were talking about even back in those early episodes. Stocks on the blockchain. It's finally here. Once again, a sign of victory for crypto. But is it really victory? As Nasdaq moves in, the same companies that ran things before, setting up new systems. SEC declares most crypto assets not securities, including staking, airdrops, and Bitcoin mining. SEC Chair Paul Atkins says the new securities guidance, which impacts most crypto assets, provides clear lines with clear terms. Obviously, I celebrate this decision. This is great news for anyone that might have issued some digital collectibles back in the day and so forth. But it is unfortunate to see how this is just quickly swinging in the political winds. How strong is this opinion if all it takes is a new president to change it out? We would prefer if this was based upon the actual belief that this is a good idea and that they should do this, rather than just the winds of politics have changed. So you're okay for now. Speaking of okay for now, the walls are closing in on Sam Bankman-Fried. The FTX founder's appeals for a new trial have fallen on deaf ears, and his mother intervention appears to have backfired. Now, with the Justice Department going nuclear and Republicans lining up to ensure Trump doesn't issue a pardon, SBF may be running out of chances to escape his fate. As it says in Politico, that guy's a piece of beep. SBF's pardon push falls flat in Congress. Not looking good for SBF. From $13,000 to $148 million, Bitcoin whale moves 2,100 BTC untouched for over 13 years. And finally, check out the World Crypto Network, where we've got more than 4,803 videos, all for free on YouTube or worldcryptonetwork.com. We're running out of time for today's show. Thanks for joining us. It turned out to be longer than we thought. That article just kept going, but I thought it was really interesting. It cataloged the major events of our times, as well as having those kind of embarrassing photos of the people in all their rich clothing and the things that they believe in and espoused in there. It was interesting to see Meltem Demore, who I had met briefly. She was working with Barry, oh, what's his name? Barry Crypto. I forgot, but Barry Silbert back in the day. And it was neat to see Meltem up in the article with the big timers. Congratulations to Meltem, although I don't know how well she came out in the article. Let us know in the comments what you thought of the article and the reading. We're running out of time for today's show, so thanks for joining us. And until next time, bye-bye.